Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning, Justin. Morning, Megan.
Good
Thanks for
morning.
joining me today on our regularly scheduled live stream that we do every week. Really excited to have you here today. We have a super fascinating topic, one that we got to be careful on time on this one.
Yeah.
About retaining internal knowledge, something that is so critical to any operation, IT or otherwise. Um, so just stay tuned for a minute on that. But it's your brief introduction. I'm George Adams from Valiant Technology. We're an MSP managed service provider based in New York. Work all over the country. We do this every week. It's called Valiant. It's a Valiant Way Live. It's also check us on YouTube and normal social. But before we get into our topic on knowledge retention, knowledge structuring, I want to give it over to Megan about our little quick tips.
Thank you, George. So I have a very fun, kind of easy one today that I've been thinking about a lot. Because of this last year of work from home, the time I save on the commute, how much time I really am at home all the time, because social lives are much smaller as are our work lives. We're all at home. I've developed a lot more hobbies, which the big joke was I could never keep a plant alive, or I never really did any crafts. And I was like, who cares? But I realized a lot of it was time. And so I have been doing a little more gardening and I've been knitting. It's been very restorative and nice. I think I have a picture of the most recent plant I kept alive. Those are my pansies. They're
That's
literally
great.
right now, right?
They're very cool.
I am very proud of them. And I had killed a plant earlier this year, so it wasn't without its struggle. But all that to say, there's some domestic habits that as we look towards maybe getting to a more hybrid model as in this pandemic, hopefully we'll leave this pandemic soon. I want to keep some of these domestic habits, these things I've had more time for because of my time at home and how they actually do help me mentally and emotionally. And I was just wondering, do you guys have anything you've kind of picked up or indulged more in kind of due to this time we've found in the pandemic?
Sure. Justin, you want to go first, or I can go
Yeah,
first? Either
I,
way.
I can. I have the classic starting something and then not continuing with it. For a while, was doing really well with a rowing machine and then fell off the rowing wagon. I'm going to pick it back up right now. It's packed up because we're moving it, but I do plan to pick that back
I,
up. I
Rowing's near and
did.
dear to my heart.
Yeah,
I love
that's
rowing.
George is the one that got me into it. He was like, "Look, you go with the rower." Yeah, many questions sent his way that he guided me,
I'm a fan.
and then let him down by not
Oh yeah,
keeping it up. Well,
Yeah,
I'll get back
happy
to it.
you. I
faces.
have faith. I
Yeah,
have 100% faith, JP.
yeah.
100% faith.
And the other one that I've done with more of the fun one for me is I started playing with the Hue light bulbs, and at first, I just have them on a timer and basic stuff, and I started getting into trying to sync them to music, but specifically casting from Spotify on my phone to some like Nest speakers that I have and have it automatically sync. And it's went through several iterations of proof of concept and from a Raspberry Pi to a laptop and parts on eBay and a whole bunch of stuff to get it almost there. So that's going to be my
Very,
project that I'll be once I finish it that I'll have finished done something.
That's
very
so
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
awesome. I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
You can. I'll
My new
all right.
hobby.
I'll write up how I did it. There we go. That'll be our knowledge transfer.
There it is. Awesome. That's great. So, yeah, actually, the hobby I picked up over the more so, I started a year ago, but I really didn't pick it up. But this winter, I think I really picked up was skiing of all things. We can't really do a lot of things indoors. I mean, I don't know all of you in the winter, and classic is what you do in the winter. That's myself skiing, my family.
Oh.
They can. I'm the worst skier on like the northeast. I think maybe the whole country. It's really hard sport to learn when you're this gray. Let's leave it at that. Um, Whereas they just kind of like went once, got like one lesson for a half and like 2 hours, and they're blasting down.
Your
And
kids.
they're awesome. Yeah, they're kids. And when they fall, it doesn't hurt quite as much as when it hurts.
Yeah.
So, but if you never did it, it's a really interesting, cool sport. One that many years ago I said to a friend of mine, I was like, I think it's the stupidest sport possible. I don't get it at all. And he's like, until you try it, how can you say you don't get it? And I was like, I'll never do it. It's dumb. It's cold. It's a stupid sport. Fast forward this year, and now I'm like, I can't wait to try it. I'm looking forward to spring, but definitely enjoyed the winter. It was definitely enjoyed the winter more than I would have years past. So now it's something to look forward to. So anyway, those are those hobbies you get. It's really cool.
Maybe
Awesome.
I'll get into it at some point, because
Gotcha.
I'm sort of you from a few years ago.
Yeah, try it. It's good.
Yeah. All right. Maybe I will. My next hobby next year.
That's right.
Got a whole year to prepare for it. So
exactly. Let's get your mindset. All right. Awesome. So thank you for that quick tip, Megan. That's really
of course.
cool.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
So today we have a kind of interesting topic about knowledge, obtaining internal knowledge. And before we dive into some of the things you can do, I think kind of going back in time a little bit to look at just other companies or firms that have dealt with this in the past. Well, one of the class examples and doing a little research in this and was in the mid 90s, Delta Airlines had a big exodus of mechanics, move around. There was something, a labor dispute, this sort of thing. And it was really complicated. And for the company at first blush, it was a really positive thing, because they saved on cost of staff, that sort of thing. But then all these problems with people not knowing, they lost like that institutional knowledge, the small pieces that allow companies to actually deliver the product and service in a timely fashion. And honestly, it caused a lot of problems for them. And when just kind of reading about it, it was like these flight delays, cancellations, unhappy customers. I mean, Delta's kind of changed as an airline recently, past couple of years. But I remember in the '90s, people I know that worked in the airline industry, they were not a well-regarded airline, because people kind of didn't think they were good. And then, a couple of years later, in 2001, they had this massive workforce reduction, but they were in a much better position to manage it, because they did some retention. There's some knowledge management that was in much better space. And it wasn't about the people per se, but the knowledge they had. So that's what we want to talk about, is getting some idea of putting together how do you retain knowledge in an organization. People move around, people do different things, they have different goals in life. So one of the things we were putting together, we have this collaboration guide that is where we're going to have release in a week or so. It's really comprehensive. It has a lot of ways to improve your ability to kind of maintain knowledge and go from there. So let's dive in a little bit about knowledge loss. Honestly, most businesses that are, especially businesses that are very digital driven, are not, what's called the knowledge worker. It's a Peter Drucker term for people who do a lot of work, and many of Valiant's customers, and Valiant itself is a knowledge worker driven business. So if knowledge gets lost, then you're losing the most critical piece of your company's ability to work, right? So one of the things is that we want to define a little bit is knowledge loss is pieces that things that are lost that are critical to business. The other part is, and you don't want to always mix up with knowledge waste. That's knowledge waste is another big problem. Knowledge waste is when you have data upon data that is not actionable, or things would be important, but you don't do anything with it. We see that a lot. I mean, just running our operation. I mean, Justin, how much stuff do we try to
and that's
overwhelming?
I think the big takeaway from the collaboration tools and is reducing that knowledge waste, is that having that one person having knowledge of something and being able to get that information to other people, to the people who need it in the moment, is a key feature of a good collaboration setup.
Right.
Knowledge loss, like I said, is more. I guess there's a few different common ways that organizations can experience knowledge loss, the biggest one and the most obvious one is employee turnover. Is that if
Right.
you've got somebody who just knows how things are done or knows something, and there isn't a system to capture that in any way, when that person leaves, then it's gone. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily even turnover. We've years ago, I remember we have had a single person doing all of our ordering, billing, procurement, and that process was all, he did that process. And when he was, even
It's all in his head.
planned, yeah, when he took a vacation for a week, it was perfectly, it was planned. We knew it was coming, and we had somebody who was going to step in and do some of it. But a lot of it was just left like, oh, we'll take care of this next week because
Right.
I don't know how he does it, or I don't know what the right way to do this is. And
Right.
we've made an effort to reduce that.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
mhm,
It's not intentional, right? It's not
right.
anyone's doing it on purpose, but people leave. I said they are unavailable. And part of it is that it's not captured in any way. It's not
Yeah.
documented. It doesn't, if the class. I mean, when I started doing IT work years ago, my kind of former mentor and who trained me a lot of it was, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Hmm.
And you hear that in a lot of different organizations. It didn't, medicine or law. Like if there's no notes, there's no recap. It didn't happen.
Yep.
Right.
And as part of it, and as part of it, also I think there's a bigger piece of like people that evolve into doing things a certain way. It becomes institutional knowledge. It becomes
Mhm.
like rote, passed on, ear to mouth kind of training.
Yeah, there's that meme that was going around. That was here's the book on how we do things, and here's the book on how we do things when you're actually working, and it's two
Yeah.
totally
Right.
different things.
Correct.
The
And
And
it's
difference.
really,
that's
yeah,
um, uh, a real problem because if not only if the knowledge isn't captured, if it's only captured once and then things change and it's not updated, uh, that or I think that falls into the next way that organization experience knowledge loss, the deletion or isolation,
correct.
and not
Right.
just the thinking of like a server deletion restore from backup, but that could be moving away from an entire system or being like, oh, we don't use this anymore, and not
Mhm.
realizing that it's used for something,
Mhm.
or isolation that here's the instructions on how to do this thing, and never updating that as things change, and
Right.
now somebody looking at the instructions doesn't get the same result that they're supposed to get.
Mhm.
Right. There's a kind of classic, like you write documentation or a process out and but you do it 100 times and you've done it 100 times. So you document it and you're missing critical steps
Hmm. Yep.
because you've
Yeah.
done it 100 times. So your
Yeah, you don't even
brain
see it.
skips,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
see it,
Or
you
Yeah.
you
know,
write down I write down the step like, "Oh, yeah, just do this." It's like, "Well, how do you do that?" "Oh, well, that's a whole other process. Let me write that." So, you
yeah, it
see,
becomes,
yeah,
it's kind of the underwear gnome problem, like
exactly. Yeah,
left
it's the
underwear
whole
profit. You kind of missed the whole
the
middle
middle
piece.
piece. It's like, "Yeah, just do this." "Okay, how do I do that?" "Well, you're gonna have to do
Oh,
this." "Okay, well, how do I do that?" "Alright, well, now I need to write the whole." uh,
so
um, uh, and I think that goes into the, coming up with good strategies for retaining
correct.
that knowledge.
Right.
Exactly.
Um,
That's kind of the next thing, and being IT folks and the focus on infrastructure, we just want to eliminate single points of failure. And
mhm,
Mhm.
and you start looking at any organization or risk. Single points of failure are the places that knock you out of the park. Like you're just you're down, you can't work. It's almost like in knowledge and processes are just as critical as actual systems
mhm,
because if the people that operate the systems not available, and if you're ever doing a business continuity plan or really deep diving into it, having the people not available becomes just as important, if not more important, than the system being unavailable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, automation's great, but you still need people to do the thing.
mhm,
So, you really want to start you really start like trying to minimize the single point zero by minimizing this knowledge loss by doing collecting response, identifying all the responsibilities and tasks,
Mhm.
templates, best practices, like all the things that, and the thing is, there's never enough time in a day to do them.
Right.
mhm,
Everyone will say that, but when they're when you need to be able to do it, and you don't have the systems documented or the person not available. I mean, I'll just say, JP, Justin, you're out for some personal things over last year during
mhm,
COVID, and we identified a number of things that you were the single point of failure on, and
Yep.
we work and we've identified them, and now we're corrected that because we want to make sure that if a person, for whatever reason, or any person in any organization, you have to kind of do this to kind of like step back a second and say, if that person's not available for any reason at all, how do you manage that? How do you work with that? So
Yeah, and it can become overwhelming when you start looking at it, because the first instinct sometimes is to just have everybody write down, okay, document all the things that you do and write down all the stuff that you do, and that can get huge and unwieldy,
right,
because there's a lot of information that people have about their jobs, and it may also do when something is complicated, you may leave things out, but also you may have a lot more than you need just to get the at least the the coverage, or remove the single points of failure. So
Mhm.
it's important to have a good unified system for that.
Yeah.
right,
And really, the work from home kind of exemplifies that in a way, because we're
Yeah.
all physically isolated, we're all in different places, so we're relying on the systems that we have for storing information and for sharing and collaborating, rather than the, oh wait, how do I do this, can you show me real quick? There is no more can you just, hey, shoulder tap, can you show me real quick, what am I doing
right,
wrong here? Because it's there. So there's more emphasis on building good systems to store and retain that knowledge.
Just,
correct,
I think even recently, I was unclear how to do something, and you pointed me to the documentation we had, which maybe a year ago you would have been like, this step, this step, this step, while I'm like standing in your office. But instead, you were
Hmm.
able to point me, and it was so easy. It was very clear, and I was grateful to have it. But it's like that kind of knowledge is easier to pass across work from
Hmm.
home boundaries, and we've just had to perfect that this year.
Yeah, but
right,
that too also shines a light on a issue we have just with our own documentation to work on, is being able to find it. Like, what
Yeah.
good is it if it's there,
right,
if it's
Yeah.
not there? So one of the key ways to help with that is by defining in your standard operating procedures, call it a single source of truth, one place that
correct,
all of the documentation goes, that everybody can use and everybody can refer to, and organized in a way that makes sense, so that everybody can find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
right. You have to be able to search it, right? You have to be able to find things in it. I mean,
Yeah.
I always say that one of the most important things is when your team is like, how do I do this thing? Instead of, as you said, Megan, go to someone's office. Hey, can you help me with this? They say, okay, let me look at the documentation first. And if they're missing
Right.
something,
Mhm.
that's acceptable, because that maybe that documentation gets refined and
Yeah.
there's version numbers, and the more you actually have people who are new to that process look at the documentation, usually the better the outcome is, because they
Mhm.
have fresh eyes. They've never done it before. They're almost like not. They don't have they don't know how to skip the steps because they don't know what the steps to skip are. That's what I find. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw it. Just Megan and I were working on a new sales playbook for a
Yeah.
company, like how we actually approach our sales and really defining it. And it was kind of a painful process because uh, when we worked on it, a lot of it was like, "Well, no, wait, hold on, let's go back. No, stop.
Yeah.
That's not what we do yet." And was we want to make sure that everything was really clear, because if we ever brought in some more staff, or we
Mhm.
want to make sure that that every customer gets a similar experience so that we don't miss something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the other pieces that we see a lot in IT is that, and Justin, we were talking about this before when we were kind of prepping for this, was, why do we do IT assessments? Why do we do
Mhm.
pre-flight work before we do projects?
Right.
So that we can not miss the thing that is so critical to the job.
Yeah.
So, and the way we started doing it, Megan and I, we started literally throwing spaghetti on the wall to see,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is what we do, and then start documenting it, and now it's in SharePoint, and at some point it will get migrated to our, like, kind of
Mhm.
single source of truth documentation platform.
Yeah, and
So
Yeah.
so with the assessments as well, a lot of our projects start with a discovery
right,
phase, and
Yeah.
the question we get is, "What do we, don't you know all of this stuff already?" And the answer to that usually is, "Well, yeah, we know the speeds and feeds, the specs, the mechanics of how systems are in place, but we don't necessarily know how you've started using them or how your business
Correct.
operates with them day to day. And it's akin to a mechanic knowing all how your car runs, but they can't necessarily make a recommendation for a new car for you until they ask you what you're planning to use with it.
Right.
To know what it is that are you hauling stuff? Are you trying to drive fast? Are you loading up the
Yeah,
kit and going up? Right.
yeah.
So that for us, that's the
Yeah.
discovery period and the IT
Right.
assessment where we're figuring out, okay, yeah, you've got Google Drive. There's a million different ways you could be using Google Drive, and if we're going to
Correct.
change something or do something with it, we need to know that before, so we don't break it, and so that we can help, guide you in the more efficient ways to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's one
Exactly.
example. I mean, that's for everything.
Exactly. And the thing that actually strikes me the most is that just about every customer that we work with, and just about almost everyone that has the platform and tools to actually start really doing this
Mhm.
internally, even if it's just documented in SharePoint or just documented in a wiki, which is there's a couple of out there. There's many out there. Some of the things that we see is there's wikis, there's intranets, which all these things kind of merge into like different layers. And sometimes there's industry documentation platforms in IT, in the technology space. There's IT Glue, IT Boost, Passportal, Confluence.
Mhm.
There's all these different ones out there, and they all do very similar things.
Mhm.
But w-
Yeah,
but
there's
in the end, right? Sorry, Justin.
no,
Say.
Microsoft's got a brand new one that they're doing is Viva, which is a
Oh yeah,
update on Yammer and Teams and a few other things, and it's this whole AI backend. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's the same thing. It's a way for teams to have access to the documentation that they need for things.
right.
There's another one I like is Lucidchart, just for making flowcharts.
Oh
Is
yeah.
such a great way to visualize how does a process work. And I'm not necessarily using the proper standards for the flowcharts. It's just like the this goes to here box, but at least it's a way to visualize. Okay, here's the now we
So
can
helpful.
here's how it goes, and now we can figure out how to do all the
Right.
other pieces.
Right.
And
Right.
these are tools that a lot of organizations have. You have it in there's tools that are included with the tools that you have that can do these things, making use of
Right.
them.
The tools, the tools are. It's funny. People tend to focus too much on tools, but really, what it is the human capital
Mhm.
time and the effort to capture it. And we see it. I mean, we see it in our every time we do iteration or improvements in our documentation or process documentation. You see, and it's not like immediate, but it's like diet exercise. Like it slowly
Mhm.
makes that like you're like, oh wait, everything's kind of better.
Right.
Everything's kind of better. And then of course there's always new challenges and new things coming up. But I think this is such a critical thing, and it's so much beyond this. And not to bring, but like this is what separates a mature business
Mhm.
Right.
from a mature. And sometimes we have a lot of go fast and break stuff, which is great, but at a certain point you have to say, okay, how do we do that? Like
Yeah.
how's it repeatable, right?
Yeah.
How we do it again and again, because I think that's really important for
Because
companies
that,
to
I mean,
deliver
at
a great
least for
service.
yeah, for our business and for our clients, that lets us deliver a better end result to our
Right.
clients because we can train our team on how to do specific things that we know are going to be repeatable rather than every time a problem comes up having to start from scratch and figure out, well, how do I fix this. It's either
Yeah.
it's something that's happened before, in which case we should have documentation about it, or it's
Yeah.
never happened before, in which case, okay, now you got to figure it out, and when you're done, document it so that when it happens again, the next person
Yeah.
can just go, "Oh, I know how to fix this because it says it right here. When this happens, do this." Boom, done.
It's the if you follow the Pareto analysis, the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
you'll absolutely find that if you document 80% of the things that happen the most, the efficiency comes out instantaneously, and then you can really protect yourself, the company, your staff, and your customers from this
Mhm.
knowledge
Yeah.
drop, knowledge loss. So this is a lot of information. I think I don't know, we should stop here before we get too in depth, because then it gets you start getting into it, and there's so many things going on here. So um, I think it's great. Please, if you have questions, please send to us. We answer. We love getting questions on our website, getting questions on our um, YouTube page, comments. Super useful. Um, we're going to. This is the kind of the end of our month of April collaboration. So the collaboration guys will be out next week. Check it out. There's gonna be some great stuff. We actually have a really exciting stream next week with a special guest. We're going to talk about some cybersecurity insurance, or cyber liability. It's also called cyber liability insurance. Just some of the pieces of it, navigating it, just doing it. Justin and I have spent many years looking at these forms, and they're evolving from these simple, like, do you have passwords? Check. All right, you're insurable. And now they're coming in as these really complex questionnaires. There's a lot of underwriting that's going on behind them, and we just want to kind of give people a little bit of a sense of why small business need to work with a partner or work with someone knowledgeable. Let's even answer these questions, because out of the box they're pretty confusing.
Mhm.
And if you don't look at them all the time, it definitely goes into like a level of expertise that we think would be helpful. So please subscribe to that. I think there's gonna be a lot of great, very useful information coming out of that stream for next week. And I said we're gonna have this the collaboration guide out, and check it out. And I really appreciate Justin, Megan. This is a great stream
Thank you.
today.
Yeah.
And if you like it, please give us a like on YouTube. And if you have any topics, once again, fire them to us. We will absolutely incorporate into our content schedule, because we love answering questions about our from out in the community. So with that, I appreciate it, and have a great day. And I'll see you next week.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you.